Survivor Series, 1990. At this time, internet and YouTube really didn't exist. YouTube definitely didn't exist, and the internet was just a thought, an idea in people's heads. At this time, we didn't really care about celebrity gossip, and the idea of a black president was a joke, was a punchline for comedians such as Eddie Murphy. And so, this year, the Survivor Series, there was going to be a surprise partner that Ted DiBiase was going to unveil. I remember my brothers and I wanted to watch this pay-per-view because our pop at his office, there were a bunch of different posters for pay-per-view events or boxing events and wrestling events, and one of them was Survivor Series. We told Pop we wanted to watch it. So we watched it that year, and that was the debut of arguably the best wrestler of the past 30 years, the past generation. Definitely the best big man in wrestling. Even other big men and giants have said, yeah, he's the man. And of course, I'm talking about The Undertaker. That's right. I remember I was watching this pay-per-view and I was just entranced at just what he was. And that started my fandom of The Undertaker. I was a fan when he debuted because I was so shocked and amazed at who and what he was, that it was one of those things that you just don't forget. And sorry about that. And this video series right now is going to be my personal recollection of The Undertaker from his debut until the unthinkable happened earlier this year. Now, I know some of you probably wondering, why did you just make that video when the unthinkable happened? Well, if I tried to do it then, I would have just been angry and mad. You would have just seen spit flying all over the place. Because that's how I was feeling, because, like I've said before, WrestleMania 30 sucked. And that was one of the big reasons why it sucked. Not to mention, the troll stealing the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. But I want to do something positive with Survivor Series around the corner. This is my personal recollection of The Undertaker from his debut until the end. And the final video is going to be about what I think is going to happen in the future now that apparently he's probably done. I hate to say it, but he might retire soon. Or he probably has retired already. But let's start at the beginning. The Survivor Series debut. He runs roughshod over the Dream Team. He only gets eliminated because of countout. I think he got counted out with Bret Hart, if I remember correctly. Because I know he eliminated 2 members of that team. He took out Coco Beware pretty easily, and I think he also took out Jim the Anvil Neidhart, which he was one half of the Hart Foundation, a pretty tough guy from what I remember, and just to see him get, sorry about that, yeah, where I record the videos are usually by a road, and so you hear cars, don't worry about them. But yeah, back to The Undertaker. That started my fandom, and that whole year I just saw him just tear through wrestler after wrestler after wrestler, and this was the era of Hulkamania in the WWF. Yeah, the real WWF as far as I'm concerned, the World Wrestling Federation. And 1991, that Survivor Series, a year later, he would challenge Hulk Hogan for the WWF Championship. And to be honest, I was a huge Hulkamaniac, and not even the Ultimate Warrior could get me to switch allegiance, but The Undertaker did. I switched allegiances. I left Hulkamania during that, because of that match. Not just because of the match, but the lead up to it. I was on The Undertaker's side. I wanted him to walk out with the WWF Championship. And so it was kind of amazing to see him walk out with it. It was like he won and the tombstone on top of the chair, and then I know the interference and all that, but just seeing that happening was just wow. It was amazing because this was again Hulkamania. it ran wild. There was no stopping it, and here it was, the Undertaker stopping it cold. I mean, even when the Ultimate Warrior won the title from Hulk Hogan, there was still quite a few people who were, sad in that Hulk had lost, and he was still very magnanimous, and didn't have the feeling of, oh, it's done. Whereas with the Undertaker winning, there was a lot of silence in the audience, especially the kids, who were like all shocked that the hero lost to his gravest threat, the Undertaker. I remember that was how they hyped that match, the gravest threat, the gravest challenge, I should say. Sorry. But then, a few days later, they had the rematch Tuesday in Texas, if I recall correctly, and it was the WWF at the time commissioner Jack Tunney was there ringside to help Hulk Hogan gain the title back from the Undertaker when Ric Flair tried to interfere in the match, and that caused the title to be vacated, and then that's when the Royal Rumble '92 with Flair winning it, and of course that started the whole tradition of having the Royal Rumble be for something, which was pretty cool. But back to the Undertaker, shortly after that, he allied himself with Jake the Snake Roberts, and he was, he even said he learned a lot from Jake the Snake, and Jake the Snake was so great on the mic that when the Undertaker betrayed him and became a good guy, it was very surprising, and it was one of those things where how they did it was really cool, because you had Jake the Snake waiting backstage with the steel chair to hit either Macho Man Randy Savage or Miss Elizabeth as they came through, and then here's you didn't know who's going to stop it, or if anybody would, or if he would just hit Randy Savage. But all of a sudden the Undertaker stops it, and I was like, why did that happen? And then Jake, with great mic work, and the Undertaker with Paul Bearer, really set the groundwork for the Undertaker being a good guy, if you want to call it. And that's the other part of what makes the Undertaker so great, is the manager that he had, Paul Bearer. Paul Bearer would stay with the Undertaker for so many years. He was almost like a part of the Undertaker mythos, because without him there at the beginning, I don't think it would have worked as well, because even the lead up to the Gravest Challenge, it wasn't the Undertaker doing a lot of talking, but it was Paul Bearer doing it. And Paul Bearer was the one doing all the great mic work, and so letting the Undertaker just say a few lines and getting that sort of atmosphere. And the best example of that, let me skip ahead a year or 2 years, because '93 wasn't the best year for the Undertaker. He had that rivalry with Johnny Gonzalez, which was okay, but their WrestleMania match wasn't all that great. The WrestleMania match at 8 was cool with Jake the Snake. They made that work. Unfortunately, looking back on it, it's not as good as you remember it, because of the way the Tombstone looked, and the Undertaker's match against Jimmy Snuka at WrestleMania 7 was okay, but it was just filler. It was just not the glorious start to what would become known as the Streak. So let's skip ahead a little bit. Go to 1994, or should I say Survivor Series 93, because this is the start of it. Back when the WWE, I'll start calling it WWE now, they had only 4 pay-per-views, and at Survivor Series 93, Yokozuna gave the Undertaker a Banzai drop. Undertaker sits up, and this was like a big shocker, because nobody sat up after the Banzai drop, and it was pretty interesting to see that happen. And that sort of started the rivalry with The Undertaker and Yokozuna for the WWE Championship at Royal Rumble in '94. And that was the casket match. And that casket match was great partially because of the lead up to it. Yokozuna, may he rest in peace, really sold being scared of the casket. And I don't blame him. A lot of people are scared of caskets. Those are for dead people. And you get thrown in one, it would be kind of chilling and creepy, to say the least. But it was Paul Bearer doing the great mic work to lead up to that, when he would have the cameraman in the coffin, not the casket, sorry, and then he would slam the lid. It was you're brand new 1994 or casket, you won't hear anything at all. And then the Undertaker would just say a few words. The only thing you will hear, Yokozuna, are the hounds of hell baying for your soul. And that's the thing. That's what made Paul Bearer so great. The compliment to the Undertaker. And then what usually gets left out when they do like the flashback to that rivalry was the very last promo, which was Paul Bearer in an old West style hearse, horse and buggy style hearse. It was like, you might be afraid. Oh yes, you might be deathly afraid. And he gets pulled off the camera, and then boom, you see the Undertaker right behind the hearse, and he's doing this with the hat on, and stupid cars. It's starting to ruin my momentum here. But anyways, it was the Undertaker goes, you shouldn't be afraid, Yokozuna. You should be terrified. It was so good. It was so good. And then the match itself was one of those things that really sticks out to me as a fan of WWE, not just a fan of The Undertaker, because it was one of those things I didn't see coming, because I was, ready to see The Undertaker win that match, become WWE Champion, and defend the title at WrestleMania 10 against whoever won the Royal Rumble. And to see what happened was rather interesting, because I didn't expect it. I didn't even think that could happen, because you had a third of the participants in the Royal Rumble come down on Yokozuna's behalf and interfere in the match and throw the Undertaker in the casket. And there's me, I won't say how old I was, the kid me, just screaming at the TV, put them all in the casket, put them all in the casket, bury them all. Oh man, and it was like, oh, I can't believe that happened. And then what was cool and even creepy as well was, he's in the casket, and all of a sudden, boom, you see the camera inside that casket, and he's on before they call it the Titantron, the screen, and he talks about how he will return and all that, and it was really cool. And then you see it's looking back at it, it's 90s cheesy, but it's a good kind of cheesy. And you see the casket explode on the screen, and then he just rising up above, ascending, if you will, into the heavens. Even though, if you look at it now, even looking back then, if you watched it on tape, which I did, you could see, the cables on his shoulders, pulling him up for, attached to him. And it was really interesting. And I mentioned in my other video about how much I hated Chuck Norris because of how bad of an actor he is. Well, one of the things is because in '94 we had a different celebrity cameo who did a really good job, because he's a good actor and he knew how to play the role, and that was Leslie Nielsen, the late great Leslie Nielsen. He was Lieutenant Frank Drebin, trying to figure out the disappearance of the Undertaker and who this other Undertaker was that was working for Ted DiBiase. And the whole vignettes about the sights of the Undertaker and who's this other Undertaker, is he a fake? Will the real Undertaker return at SummerSlam in '94, which is the last match. And that match, it's an okay match, but I think a lot of people were just kind of stunned at what they were seeing, and the fact that it was two bigger guys, and the other guy who was pretending to be the Undertaker wasn't as good as the real Undertaker. So because he wasn't as good of an athlete, it kind of hurt the match, if you want to look at it. But the pomp and circumstance, or the pageantry of it, and the presentation of him, of the casket being brought out, and then Paul Bearer reaching in to get a new urn, and then seeing, you know, the Undertaker's silhouette, and then boom, you see him walking into the ring. But now he had purple gloves. It was really cool. The presentation, all that stuff was just excellent. And even after the match, with the whole light coming out of the urn, and it was really cool. And then they do the rematch with Yokozuna, and Chuck Norris can't act to save his life. And so, but that's the end of this this first part. I'm going to go into 95 and probably the rest of the 90s in part 2. And so, Eddie here, Chuck Norris sucks still. Undertaker is about to enter 1995, the Royal Rumble, and I think in that match he's going to go up against IRS. So, leave it there for now. Man, stupid cars coming through here. It's all loud. Anyways, I'll leave the rest of the 90s into the next video. Going to talk a little bit about the Attitude Era as well, and his matches at that time. It might even be 2 parts, just in the late 90s, just to let you know. Okay, take care. Later.